Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about the vertex in the 7th house in a natal chart. Now, anyway, first thing is, as far as this placement goes, well, you may be encouraged, coaxed, cajoled, persuaded, and even downright implored to focus more on matters pertaining to others, open adversaries even, legal issues, and the significant other, if you do have one now, if applicable. Now, there may be business partnership situations that need attention. People may ask you to do things with them, to collaborate with them on projects, perhaps. You may be pulled or drawn to get away from self-centered and egocentric matters, matters pertaining to oneself, and focus perhaps more on the needs of others in general. You may be called upon to do more negotiation, perhaps even act as a mediator in some cases, be involved in reconciling differences with others. You may be pulled or drawn toward matters connected with the significant other. Perhaps others may actually be encouraging you to find to become married, perhaps, or if you're not currently married and you've procrastinated on finding that significant other, to go ahead and try to push the issue a little bit more, so to speak. And you also may be drawn or pulled toward a 7th house profession, such as working as an attorney, legal aid, paralegal, judge, a bailiff, an arbitrator, a mediator, perhaps a marriage counselor, or even a negotiator, somebody that does work that is associated with negotiation. So anyway, well, this could also be about others' interests taking precedence over your own. And look at the sign that the vertex is in your 7th house, as this, of course, could impact the delineation. Now, let's say if the vertex is in Capricorn in the 7th house, you may be asked and be encouraged by others to pursue legal matters, but with a lot of that Capricorn-like premeditation and planning, discipline, prudence, and seriousness. Now, let's take another example. Let's say if one has the vertex in Aries in the 7th house, well, you may be encouraged, coaxed, persuaded, perhaps to deal with those legal matters, documents, relationships, and open adversaries with a lot of assertiveness, aggression, and courage, and also without hesitation or procrastination. And it could be matters connected with this that could be very combative and acrimonious. Aspects to the vertex in the 7th house could also impact the delineation. Now, let's say, well, for example, let's say Mercury makes a sextile or trine to your vertex in the 7th house. Now, this could be auspicious for communications in matters associated with the vertex in the 7th, such as being able to be more readily understood in matters connected with negotiation and compromise that others are encouraging you to do. And for those communications, perhaps connected with legal matters, for example, to go smoothly and amicably. Statements are apt to not be misconstrued or be seen as ambiguous or cryptic. Now, let's take another example. Let's say that Venus makes an adverse aspect to your natal vertex in the 7th house. Well, you may be encouraged, coaxed, cajoled, persuaded, even downright implored, perhaps, to pursue matters of a legal nature, but you may not have the finances to get it taken care of, or it might really have a detrimental or very adverse effect on your finances. So let's say if your vertex, now I want to talk about, well, the vertex in Synastry, as many of you may know, can be very important and significant. if you have, let's say, your vertex, I mean, in this case in the 7th house, and that's the house of the significant other, and you have that vertex making a conjunction to another's sun, moon, or ascendant, it could be a very powerful connection. Now, it's not going to be likely like as instantaneous or as instant as someone's south node conjunct another sun, moon, or ascendant, but it could be more where it's really more like a unexpected and anticipated. It could be as the relationship progresses and the connection progresses slowly, or as it evolves, you may notice something, and suddenly it kind of just hits you that, hey, maybe this could be somebody that's going to have a really strong, powerful impact on my life one way or another. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be something of a romantic nature or a soulmate or a future significant other, but but one way or another, whether it's platonic or romantic, it could be a very important, significant connection. Now, the fact this is in the 7th house of marriage, I think helps the prospects, though, that it could be somebody that would ultimately could be that significant other and marriage partner, perhaps. So, anyway, another thing too is looking at this now. If let's say if your vertex is taking an example, let's say that your vertex makes a conjunction to another person's ascendant. Well, you might be pulled or drawn toward that person's outer qualities, the outer demeanor, and the qualities and characteristics that that person projects very strongly on the surface and outwardly. I mean, say if it's Gemini, for example, well, you might be drawn and pulled toward the versatile, multifaceted, and really loquacious and good way with words and diction that this person outwardly projects. Also, another thing I want to get to is that the fact that you might, the fact that you might have this, as far as this goes, this vertex, if it's conjunct someone's sun, moon, or ascendant, another person's sun, moon, or ascendant in the 7th house, you could wind up being connected to somebody that may be in a 7th house type field or profession, such as somebody that's connected with the law, such as an attorney, a paralegal, a bailiff, or judge, somebody that works as a mediator, or somebody that deals with some kind of where negotiation figures prominently in that person's career, perhaps, and maybe so those are some things to look at as far as that goes. And also, in the chart too, it's also important to look at things perhaps in the chart that may reaffirm this placement or could be contraindicators. Now, let's say that you have a very strong 7th house and or Libra influence in your chart. It could make it a lot easier to comply with what is asked of you in connection with the vertex in 7th house matters and follow up on them, on those requests easier. But I mean, if you have, let's say, for example, though, let's say you don't have any planets in the 7th house, you don't have either the nodes in the 7th, and you have a very strong 1st house. Well, the opposite may be true, and it may be where you're a little bit more about being a little bit more egocentric and more about focusing on matters pertaining to yourself as opposed to others, and it can make it more difficult to follow up on those matters connected with others associated with the vertex in the 7th house position. Now, another example could be if you have a preponderance of planets on the left side of the chart, you might be more inclined to be more self-reliant, independent, not really thinking about doing things like, collaborating with others on things, and it might be harder to do the things in connection with the vertex in the 7th house. But if you have the majority of your planets on the right side of your chart, which of course would be houses 4 through 9, you'd be more about doing things that might be a little bit more dependent, which wouldn't be necessarily that bad in this case, given that you can follow up more, perhaps on the vertex in the 7th house placement, and more inclined to do things more about doing things, collaborating with others, doing things perhaps with somebody else as opposed to by yourself. And it might be where you might really need others to motivate you as opposed to being self-motivated. So anyway, the other one last thing I want to get at as far as this vertex in the 7th house placement. Now, also transits to the vertex can be significant as well. Now, let's say, for example, you have transit Saturn making a conjunction to your natal vertex in the 7th house. Well, this could signify perhaps an important meeting with someone, which could result in being a potential significant other if you not currently have one, or just a strong meeting in general, perhaps with somebody that could be an older person, could be somewhat authoritative, but also maybe somebody very mature and responsible. And if it turns out to be somebody that could be a prospective significant other, well, it could be a person that may take the relationship very seriously. Now, keep in mind the 7th house is also about open adversaries. So I think in some isolated cases, you could have a situation with an open adversary that could be somebody that could be an older person, and somebody, in some cases, well, you look at it, somebody that might be rather responsible as well, and somebody also that could be, a person that might be maybe in some profession connected with authority. Perhaps in some cases this could be, somebody, could it be the father in some cases? In some cases it could be, though that would be very isolated. But anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment for the vertex in the 7th house in the natal chart. Stay tuned next time, where I'll be talking about the vertex in the 8th house in a natal chart. 2 things I want to get with you on before I head out. Firstly, the stars may impel, but do not compel. And secondly, never isolate any single astrological element, aspect, planetary placement, position, configuration, influence, or what have you, and make an analysis of a person, astrologically speaking, based on this alone, because astrologically speaking, the person is the sum of all their components in their natal chart and not just one. Until next time, people, stay well.